Okay, hello everyone and welcome to this video. Now, the purpose of this video is to guide you through really the whole process of planning and writing and practicing your spoken language speech. The video is here to help you work independently at home because I know many of us find that at times rather daunting. And clearly, with it being a video, you can pause it, you can go back and rewatch sections. And the idea is that you can also use this alongside the work you're doing in your curriculum booklet in your normal lessons. So by the end of today's video, you should really have a really strong idea of how to choose a great topic, how to then turn that topic into the central question of your speech, how to generate various ideas when you perhaps start to feel a bit stuck, how you can research your speech properly, how you can structure your speech really clearly and carefully, how you can write in a formal but also natural spoken style, prepare for questions at the end of your speech, and then finally, how you can practice your delivery of it at home again effectively. So the aim is not just to sort of get through this process, get through the speech. The aim is to deliver something really clear, something really thoughtful, that we're really interested in ourselves as students, and also that helps us feel more confident. So, this is what I expect you to be able to do by the end of this video. And of course, please rewatch any sections that you feel you need to. Now, let's turn to the question at the top of the slide, which is what exactly is the spoken language task? So for this part of your English language GCSE, you must deliver an individual researched presentation. So that means that you will choose, and that's one of the things we'll cover in this video, you choose a topic, you research it properly, you then prepare a formal talk, a presentation, you deliver it to your teacher and your English class, and then when your speech is over, you will answer a series of questions that the class and the teacher will pose to you, having listened to your speech. So your whole assessment, this is not a 2-hour speech, we're just talking about about 10 minutes in total. That includes questioning time. So a really strong presentation might be around about 5 minutes of speaking, followed by a few questions. It's not really that big a deal. It's not about reading an essay out loud, though. It's about communicating your ideas clearly and coherently out loud to an audience. You're showing that you can speak in a really formal, clear way, you can organize your ideas, use formal standard English, and respond thoughtfully in the moment when people ask you questions. So that's what the task entails, and that's what we're working towards. Okay, now why does all of this matter? Why is this important? Because this task, it's true, doesn't actually change your main GCSE English language exam grade, but it does appear separately on your GCSE English language certificate as what's known as the spoken language endorsement. And there are 3 levels you can get in it. So you can get a pass, a merit, or a distinction. It really matters this though, okay, because by doing well in your speech, you're showing you can speak clearly, you can speak confidently, and you can speak in a formal way. And that's really, really useful for college or for sixth form, whether you're applying for apprenticeships, going for particular jobs, in interviews, and also just in real adult life. It is also, and this is why I enjoy this so much as a teacher, it's one of the few chances in school, and certainly within the GCSE kind of curriculum, where you can research and speak about something that genuinely is of interest to you. It helps us, I suppose, get to know you a little bit better, and I've always enjoyed that. So the best speeches, in my experience, usually come from students who really care about and are interested in their topic. So don't just choose the first thing that comes into your head or something that you think your friends are doing or whatever, or that you think is easy. Choose something you are willing to think about in detail, properly, and then you actually want to talk about. Okay, that's what's really, really important. That's going to help you be successful. So, a successful speech really has 2 elements to it. First, there's the actual content of the speech. So what we're talking about there are the ideas, your research, the examples you choose, the structure, vocabulary, all of that, okay? Your central message in your speech. But secondly, and this is also, I would say, at least equally as important, is the delivery. So that means what? It means your voice, your pace, the eye contact that you give to the audience across the course of your speech, your posture, how you stand, the way that you convey confidence in terms of what you're saying, and your ability in the moment to listen to a question and then answer it. And so you need both of these successful kind of speeches have both of these sides, the content and the delivery. So a brilliant script delivered with kind of no confidence, no enthusiasm, no energy is not going to be as successful as it could be. But equally, confident delivery with really weak ideas is also going to fall short. So your job, using this video and the work you're doing in class, is to build both strong ideas and strong delivery. So, what are teachers actually looking for? Now, you can see listed here what earns you a pass, what earns you a merit, what earns you a distinction. So this means, if we think about the top level distinction, okay, it means a distinction speech, a distinction level speech doesn't just say, this is my topic, here are some facts about it, here's why it's interesting. A distinction level speech explores a bigger issue, a societal level issue. It makes the audience think maybe in a different way. It shows the audience that you've thought carefully about your topic and you can explain your ideas with confidence. Now, I want to go through some mistakes that students can often make. Probably the biggest mistake that students make is choosing a topic that is just too broad and too vague. So I will hear students say they want to do a speech, they want to write about social media or football or knife crime or AI or vaping or body image or whatever it might be. Okay? They're not bad topics in and of themselves, but they are absolutely too broad as topics on their own. Okay? Who can talk about everything to do with artificial intelligence in 5 minutes? It makes no sense. Okay? So you can't say everything about AI, social media in 5 minutes. You just can't. So you need to narrow your focus. And therefore, what you need is a central question. So a central question, I'll give you some examples of this, okay? A central question gives your speech focus. So instead of just thinking, all right, I'll do a speech on social media, you might ask, is social media damaging teenage self-esteem? Instead of just doing a speech on AI in general, you might ask a question like, is AI helping students learn, or is it actually stopping them from thinking for themselves? Okay? A strong question gives your speech a sense of direction and focus. It also narrows the focus of the speech, so therefore it's much more achievable in 5 minutes. And by extension, if you pose this question, the rest of your speech, it doesn't write itself, but it's easier to structure it because, of course, the rest of your speech is in effect the answer to the question you pose at the beginning. Okay, next. So start with a topic you are interested in. And you can see on the slides here a range of very broad topics: AI, knife crime, body image, drill music, for example. And you can see these are all really broad. And then underneath is a question. And the question narrows the focus. So that's how we turn topics into questions. By doing this, it narrows the focus and makes it much easier because it gives you your speech a clear path. You're not just talking in general, you're building an answer to a focused question. Okay, generating ideas, particularly when you feel a little bit stuck. It's normal to feel like that, okay? So, lots of students struggle because what they think is that you just, like that, need to come up with a perfect idea straight away, and you don't. You need to start with an acceptance that the process of generating ideas is messy. Now, I am a big fan of writing lists when generating ideas. Not everything you write down is going to be the absolute best idea. In fact, what often happens, I find this, is I write a list of ideas. The first few things that come out of my brain are boring and obvious. And as I keep writing and keep thinking, more interesting stuff eventually emerges out of my brain. Okay, so mind map, they need to be your best friend. Think about, write your topic in the middle of the page. Around it, we've got problems linked to the topic, people affected by the topic, causes of the problems, consequences of the problems, different viewpoints on the topic, examples from real life, statistics that you might want to be researching, possible solutions to the problem or question that you are proposing. So I'll give you an example. If the topic is social media and body image, let's say, your mind map is going to include things like filters, the use of Photoshop, the role of influencers, the role of comparison being the thief of joy, mental health, teenage girls and boys, and how body image is affecting them in slightly different ways, the role of algorithms in pushing certain forms of content, and kind of tracking and monitoring our behavior on these platforms, beauty standards, self-esteem. You can platform responsibility, the responsibility of social media platforms. You can see you've got like loads of ideas. Okay, we're not judging the ideas, we're just getting them down because planning starts off in that messy way. We can organize these ideas and start to shape them into our speech later. Okay, we've got to start messy with some brainstorming. Okay, now, when developing the planning, moving from that kind of brainstorm mind mapping of ideas, there are three core questions, key questions that we want to be asking ourselves, okay? And they're fairly simple. So, what is the problem? Okay, what is a problem in relation to AI? What is a problem potentially in relation to social media, use of mobile phones, the problem with the exam system, okay, whatever it might be, climate change, what's the problem? Why does it matter? And what do we want to change? What do you want to change? What are some solutions? Okay, because these questions become the backbone really of your whole speech. So again, go back to the topic, social media and body image. The problem is, might be something like teenagers are constantly exposed to unrealistic images online. Okay, that's a problem. Why does that matter? Well, it matters because this can damage confidence, it can damage self-esteem, and it can damage young people's mental health. Okay, so what do we want to do about it? What should change? Social media companies, schools, parents, young people all need to respond more seriously to this issue. That's already the beginning of a speech. Okay, we're not making the process complicated. We're asking those three clear questions. One, what's the problem? Two, why does that matter? Three, what should change? Okay, now, on top of that, we want to think about our purpose, choose our purpose. What are you trying to do with your speech? Okay, so are you trying to persuade your audience to agree with you? Are you trying to inform them about something that you consider really important? Are you trying to maybe challenge a stereotype or a common belief, maybe a myth that people believe in? Are you trying to explain a problem and then suggest some solutions? Are you maybe trying to raise awareness about an issue that you think people have overlooked or don't know about and they should know about? Your purpose really affects everything that you're trying to produce. So that's why it's really, really important. If your purpose is to persuade people, well, your speech needs a really strong viewpoint. You want to persuade them what you think. You need to be clear what you think and what your argument is. If your purpose is to inform your audience, you need really clear explanations and you also want some reliable evidence. If you want to challenge a stereotype, you need to show the audience why that stereotype and their assumptions might be wrong. And if you don't have a purpose, if your speech is lacking in purpose, it's going to feel like a list of facts. It's going to be incoherent, or it's certainly not very engaging or interesting. A speech with a purpose feels very focused. It feels really, really deliberate. Now, remember that your audience is your class, your English class, and your English teacher, and that really matters. Now, what you need to be thinking about is what are they likely to already know? What do they potentially care about? And what might make them listen? So think, why should members of my class, why should my, other students in my class, why should they care about my topic? How does it actually affect them as young people? Really important. What examples will they find engaging, interesting? What examples will they understand? What vocabulary will be clear, mature, and also engaging? And what do I want them to think and or feel by the end of my speech? So it's a really obvious example. If you are doing a speech focused on social media, it would be very strange to speak to your class, to your audience, and indeed your teacher, as if they'd never heard of TikTok, Instagram, or Snapchat. They know the world that you are talking about. And so your job would not be to introduce them to that world as if they've never encountered any social media platforms. Your job would be to help them see and understand social media in a deeper way. Okay, which brings us on to your main message. So once you've got your topic, you've got your question, you need to be able, I think, to write your main message, your central argument in just one sentence. Because what you're doing there is you are crystallizing your core argument, okay, by summarizing it. So your argument might be, I believe social media companies must take more responsibility for the damage unrealistic images do to teenagers' self-esteem. Or you might say, people often blame drill music for violence, but this ignores the deeper social problems that many drill artists are describing and engaging with. Or AI can be a powerful tool for learning, but only if students use it to support their thinking rather than to replace their thinking. Okay, your main message in your speech, remember you've got about 5 minutes or so to deliver your speech. It should be so clear that someone could actually repeat your main message sentence back to you if you said it to them. If you can't explain your argument in just one sentence in your speech, okay, your speech is probably not focused enough yet. It's probably too broad. Okay, now research, which is not just Googling something. Okay, so a good speech needs evidence. It needs facts, it needs studies, it needs statistics. Not loads of those things, but some of those things. So what that means then is we need to research. And we need at least, I think, 3 different sources. Now, there's a list of different sources, possible sources there, okay, that you may want to go to. TikTok is not a source, okay, would be my general view. It's certainly not a reliable research source. For every single source that you use, you need to write down the title and the website that it's come from. You need to think about what you've learned. You need to think about that one useful fact and statistic, or indeed quotation from an expert, okay, in the subject or topic that you're looking at. Don't just copy and paste huge chunks of information from websites. That's plagiarism. It's also probably not going to be very engaging. And you also need to understand the research well enough that you can then explain it in your own words in a way that's comfortable for you. Okay? Because research gives your speech a sense of authority. It shows your argument is not just a random opinion, but it also has to support your views and your argument. If it just sounds like you're kind of regurgitating something you've copied and pasted off the internet, it's not going to be engaging. It's not going to make for a particularly good speech. So in terms of evidence to include, there's again guidance there on the slide. You can read that for yourself. Remember, evidence on its own is not enough. You need to explain to your audience, to those people listening to your speech, why the evidence matters. Not just what the evidence is, but why does it matter? So we don't just go, oh, a study in 2019 found. You need to be saying, well, this matters for these reasons, because this is where your thinking and your argument becomes clear. Okay, talking about argument and persuasion, let's go back to the Aristotelian triad, okay? Ethos, pathos, logos. These are the 3 types of persuasion. So we've got ethos, credibility. You need to sound trustworthy, sensible, well-informed, well-researched. You build credibility, ethos, with your audience by using reliable sources of evidence, by speaking in a formal, precise way, and showing that you understand the issue in a really complicated and interesting way. Pathos is about emotion. You want to make your audience feel something, whether that's concern, whether that's anger, injustice, sympathy, hope, a sense of urgency. And you build that through examples, through anecdotes, so little stories that kind of illustrate the point that you're making, vivid language, and also direct address, you, and also collective kind of pronouns like we, okay, where you draw yourself kind of closer to your audience. Logos, it really is logic and rationality. Your argument has to make sense. You build logos throughout the course of your speech by explaining causes, by explaining consequences, by explaining solutions clearly. And the best speeches really appeal to all 3 elements of the Aristotelian triad, okay? The 3 key components, ethos, pathos, and logos. Your speech needs a balance of all 3. Okay, moving on. Strong openings. How do we write a strong opening? Because your opening, okay, no one wants to get up and go, good morning, year 10. I'm standing here to deliver a speech on the topic of, it's boring, okay, I'm already bored, want to stop listening. So your opening needs to make your audience listen, want to listen. So you could begin with a shocking or surprising statistic, a little story, an anecdote to kind of draw them in, a rhetorical question, a bold, potentially controversial statement, a vivid image, or a direct challenge. Okay, so it might be something like, how many times have you looked at your mobile phone today, and how many times has it made you feel worse about yourself? Or every day, millions of teenagers compare their real lives to someone else's edited highlight reel. Or imagine being told hundreds of times a day that you are not attractive enough, that you are not successful enough, not interesting enough. For many young people, that is exactly what social media feels like. Okay, so a strong opening doesn't need to be dramatic for the sake of it. What it needs to do is be engaging and lead naturally into your topic. Okay, your central question. So, your central question shapes the whole speech. We focused on that. Okay, your opening introduces the question. Your first section of your speech is going to explain the issue, whatever that issue might be. So, if your question is, are social media platforms damaging teenage self-esteem? Okay, your opening is going to introduce the question. Your first section is going to explain how social media actually affects self-image. The second section of your speech is going to be thinking about evidence and some real life examples. The third section will consider responsibility and solutions. Okay, and then your conclusion, you return back to that question and effectively summarize your final answer. It gives your speech a sense of a journey, and the audience should feel, therefore, that the whole speech is kind of building towards a really clear answer in line with your overall argument. At the same time, we need to recognize the other side, okay? Because good speeches, distinction level speeches, don't pretend the issue is somehow like really straightforward or simple. A mature speech recognizes other people have other viewpoints. So they've used the various phrases that you can see on the board there, okay? So you might say something like, some people might argue that social media is not the problem and that young people simply need to just spend less time online. While personal responsibility is important, it does matter, this argument ignores the fact that platforms are deliberately designed to keep users scrolling. And so that makes you sound thoughtful. It's going to help you reach merit distinction level because you're showing more complicated, complex thinking. And linked to that, mature vocabulary. Now, it's not about trying to swallow a thesaurus and just using really obscure vocabulary for the sake of it, but you need precise language. We don't say social media is bad. We could say something like social media can be harmful when it encourages comparison, addiction, and insecurity. Okay, and there's another example on the slide there as well. You're choosing vocabulary that helps you, that fits with your topic, that also helps you explain and argue your viewpoints and your ideas really clearly. It's got to be mature, clear, and formal. Academic vocabulary, formal vocabulary, is all about precision. On top of that, we want some rhetorical techniques. It's not about just cramming them all in, okay? Forcing rhetorical techniques in where they don't perhaps need to be used, but there are some useful techniques listed on the slide there. And you can see something as straightforward as that, as the triple there, that triplet, okay? You know, what have we got? We need honesty. We need responsibility. We need change. Feels like a speech. It's that kind of rhetorical patterning, okay, that helps helps the audience engage and listen very carefully to what you have to say. It also drums in core messages. You might say something like social media can become a web, trapping young people in constant comparison. Obviously, we've just used a metaphor there, comparing social media directly, metaphorically, to a web. Okay, that's again, it's a useful technique to use when it strengthens your message. They're not useful if they're just lobbed in there seemingly at random. Okay, and then talking of endings, let's think about endings now. How do we end our speech strongly? It shouldn't just say, right, that's the end of my speech. It's all done. Thank you very much for listening. See you later. Your ending should feel really, really well crafted and deliberate. It's the final thing that your audience are going to be left with, that they're going to be thinking about. So you need to return to your central question, summarize your main argument, offer an overall solution, and challenge the audience. Okay? You can also be describing, this would be very, very powerful. You know, if we do X, this is the future that we can create, okay? A kind of positive vision of the future, a utopian vision of the future, we might say. We want endings that give an answer, use repetition, and leave the audience feeling hopeful, even like a call to action. What can they go out and do having listened to your speech? Okay. Now, talking of it being a speech, we're writing for speaking. So a good speech is not like an essay just being read out loud. Okay, it's not going to be engaging, it's going to be rather boring. Written essays can have very long sentences, very complex paragraphs and sentences in general, because it's read, it's designed to be reread. Whereas a speech, it's ephemeral, it's gone. You hear it and then it's gone. Okay, so we need clarity, we need repetition, we need shorter sentences, we need pauses, we need to use things like signposting, firstly, or now let us consider the issue of, or there is another side to the issue, which is those sorts of signposting phrases help guide the listener through your speech, help them understand it. And so it's really important as you write your speech, you read it out loud. If you're reading a sentence out loud and you feel like you're running out of breath, sentence is probably too long. If it sounds a bit robotic, if it doesn't feel like you, okay, it doesn't feel like something you would say out loud, change it, adapt it, simplify it. A good speech, should sound formal, it should sound precise and academic, okay, but it should also sound human, okay? So, and one way of assisting with that is to make sure we're not just reading from a script, okay? You are allowed, obviously, to write your full speech out, that's important, but when you deliver it, you want cue cards, bullet points. Again, guidance, and you'll do this in class as well, you work on this in class, but some guidance around what you should be including in terms of your cue cards. You're not writing full paragraphs out because you don't want to be just reading off the cue card in front of you. You want to be actually looking and addressing the audience directly, talking to the audience directly. Way more engaging than just like looking down for the whole course of the speech. Okay, so your goal ultimately needs to be to know your speech so well that the cue cards are there to kind of support you and cue you, to kind of nudge you in the direction of what you need to be saying, rather than kind of controlling the way that you actually deliver it. Now, at the end of your speech, you're going to be asked some questions. You'll work on this in class. You want to be thinking about what questions are they likely to ask you, and there's some sort of generic open questions that you could be asked listed on the slide there. Now, I would prepare for this really explicitly. What questions are likely to come up? Right? So if you're saying if you're making a particular argument and you know you're going to get a question which is around, well, okay, that's your argument, but some people would argue the opposite. How do you respond to that? You can prepare for that question. You can have a kind of pre-planned response, not written out, but rehearsed. And a lot of the time when you see people delivering speeches or answering questions, and it seems like, wow, they're really confident. They're answering that just, off the top of their head. They're not really. What they've done is they've practiced. You've not seen the practice. They've practiced, they've rehearsed, they've thought about what questions are going to be coming their way, and they've got a series of answers and ideas already pre-planned in their head. That's what you should be doing too. Okay, it's really, really good, a really good life skill to develop, and really, really important. Okay, so answering questions well is all about thoughtful, developed explanation. Okay. Think about the difference between that basic answer and a stronger answer there. Notice the difference. The best answers are balanced, they're formal, and they're really well developed. Now, practicing at home, again, some guidance, and you'll do lots of practice in class as well. Okay, but I would do this in front of a mirror, hence the image on the slide there, and I would actually practice saying my speech out loud in front of a mirror. Okay, anything you feel that doesn't work, or I'm speaking too quickly, I don't like the way I'm saying that, change it, adapt it. It's only by saying your speech actually out loud, not just reading it in your head, that you're going to be able to feel really, really well prepared when you deliver it in front of your audience. Some guidance there about how to make sure you deliver it effectively. Okay, remember, delivery. Most important thing in the speech in many ways. It's about being nervous, yeah, but also recognizing I need to be clear, I need to be thoughtful. Okay, so coming towards the end of the video, some common problems and fixes there that we've addressed, and then finally a checklist. By the end of this video, if you've worked your way through it, you should have done all of those things. So I'm going to wrap things up now. Very best of luck. See you on the next one.